just declared war on the whole planet.
Your professor's dream is dead, so I offer a new one.
His day ends one way.
And so you have chosen your side.
Oh, good. We're skipping the blabber. Magnus, for the love of God, don't do this!
Well, fortunately for all of us, we're not skipping the blabber. Welcome to Marvel Movie Talk. As always, I am Christian Bladt, and as so often in recent weeks, we are here to talk about X-Men 97, the season 1 finale. It happened like that in the blink of an eye. I can't believe it's already here with us, as she so often is, the one, the only, Katie Hampton.
Hey.
And of course, Nate Miller. Nate, thank you, sir, for being here today.
Hello.
And David Brody. Thank you, sir. And David Brody was dropping hot takes before we even started the show. So I can't wait to get into it. I think for the first time in 10 episodes that I have a major criticism for a story point that I take quite a huge umbrage with the writers, but we'll get to all of it. Obviously, Daniel Drew knows that when it's blabbering time, it is indeed blabbering time right here on Marvel Movie Talk on Geekscape. Let's go around, just sort of talk about, instant reactions when you finished watching. I did send a little notice. Hey, make sure you check out the post-credit scene. And Katie, you thanked me for that because you
I really did.
It.
I hadn't seen it. It explained a lot of stuff that I was like, well, what the hell? So I'm really glad you told me that because my opinion of this episode completely changed.
Excellent. All right. I like hearing that. So your opinion up until that point, had it been one of disappointment? What was it?
Well, a little bit, because it was not the cliffhanger I was expecting. I was expecting a cliffhanger for sure. And then, as Daniel Drew has so aptly said, now we wait 2 to 3 years. But I wasn't expecting it to be the way that it went. And I was very confused because there were some characters that I was not familiar with. And then Christian told me about the post-credit scene, and I was like, oh, and then things started to click and fire.
Right. Yeah. They go very deep in some of the mythology with the not this as much the end credit scene, but sort of the post where the hell are the X-Men interaction. So, and we'll talk about all of that. Nate, how did you feel this episode was? Obviously, we've been along this great ride for the last 10 weeks. Do you feel they stuck the landing, as they say, or did you have any issues with this finale?
I mean, it's definitely not perfect. There's some things that do feel maybe a little bit rushed. But the sheer amount of like content and cameos and setups for further storylines is like so satisfying that overall I very much so enjoyed the episode. I haven't had a chance to watch it again yet. But
usually when you join us, you've had time to watch it a second time. So
I try to, yeah. It was, it was great. I have minor nitpicking issues, but like if I'm rating it, it's like a 9.5 out of 10. Like I think given how consistent the season has been, I think the finale can continue that same level of consistency at breakneck speed. And it just got me really excited for the possibilities of where they could go. Like, again, like the potential of how deep into the Marvel or X-Men, like actual really nerdy lore they're willing to mine for story stuff. And like, there is no depth they will not go. It looks like, apparently.
Yeah, no. I mean, yeah, and we'll get into some of that. And if you say the word nerdy lore 3 times, the Lord of nerdy lore magically appears, our friend Eric Conner. With a puppet and a dog bark at the same time. But you'll wait your turn. Mr. Brody, your thoughts on the finale, and save your hot take for a moment, but your thoughts on the episode.
I enjoyed it. I love the cameos. I started writing down every one to make sure I didn't miss any.
Yeah.
There were a couple I had to Google. I won't lie. They were post my time of reading comics. But I was like, oh yeah, I know who that is. There was a couple I didn't know, and I had to look them up. I thought the action was great.
Well, now I'm curious. Who did you have to look up?
I didn't know who Dust was.
Okay,
I didn't know who Destiny was, or I didn't know who Dr. Reyes was. But I sure as hell knew who Alpha Flight was because I wore that shirt a couple of weeks ago.
You did, and I want to know why Psylocke was standing there with Alpha Flight. I'd like that explanation, please.
Yeah, why was she there? And well, so was Dr. Reyes, who apparently was an X-Men post my time.
Sure,
why weren't they in the X-Men scenes in this episode? But I don't know.
I was
that was
excited.
Confusing.
I was excited to see Cloak and Dagger, Daredevil, Cloak and Dagger with Daredevil. Obviously we did actually have Captain America said something. Iron Man kind of was there as eye candy. We'll go through all of it. So in general, you were happy. Apart from being tardy, Mr. Conner, what are your thoughts on this episode?
I always enjoy coming for the shame and the mockery, and then I've gotten both already, so my job's done. I will say, remember, I think it was last week I was talking about the penultimate episodes tend to be a little better. I'm going to stay with that. I think the penultimate episode was a little better, but my God, I mean, I could hear the sounds of geeking out from the four of you. I could hear the sounds of Brody disappointment in the lack of Wolverine. these things, they haunt me. But in the end of it all, I mean, this is really Marvel just like nailed this one. And, like 10 episodes and you're like, oh, wow, could they handle that? Well, yeah, they could. And, there's one or two along the way that weren't so great, but I think this was a really strong ending. The cameos. Yeah, I know. I took so many screen grabs early that I was like, this is getting in the way of me actually watching this. So at some point I just stopped. I love the Cloak and Dagger one. That was
well, and I thought the interesting thing was that they made a point to name check King T'Chaka, who of course is T'Challa's father.
Right.
We met in Civil War. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. They made sure to distinguish that that was who we got.
T'Chaka, not T'Challa,
this is I'm still wondering about this. Your screen grab managed to omit Puck, which was a little bit rude. He's almost there. You can see him a little bit.
I mean, this shit at 1 a.m. You're lucky you can get anything.
Puck is the easiest one to cover up too.
That's why they have both Sasquatch and Puck on the same team. They
balance out the average height,
entire spectrum. I did notice that, and so I got your emails before I'd watched the episode. So of course I didn't open them because your email screenshots would ruin the episode if I were to have looked at them.
Yes, indeed.
So, before we go into some specifics, is there anything in particular you want to say overall about the episode, Eric?
I mean, to their credit, like season 2 can't come soon enough, and really good. I listen to this late at night, so I have my headphones on. The sound design was awesome in this one. Yeah. I've admired the music previously, but there was like some moments that I grabbed screen caps of with like Rogue doing the whatever you call the sonic clap.
I call it the Hulk clap, but yes, other people do it as well. But yeah, that was nice.
Yeah, and that moment, like I actually played it back. I'm like, whoa, that was cool. And they had a lot like that. So I think they've really done great technical work with the animation, sound design, music, all the tools at their disposal, which only deepens the storytelling and the X-Men of it, if you will.
Yeah, so Daniel Drew makes the point of Morph as Mr. Fantastic. We've gotten some great cameos this season by Morph taking the form of a character that otherwise doesn't appear in the episode. But
I'm sorry, this is making me laugh so hard I cry because I'm just watching Brody's face right now.
Well, it's interesting because I saw Daniel's comment, and instead of sort of going through the episode, we do want to let Brody open the can of hot take. That is, what's your problem with this show, Brody?
Well, Marvel has done a great job of taking people off the field, off the playing field if they're too powerful, like Hulk and Thor, being on Ragnarok during the Marvel series because they didn't They were too powerful for those movies. They needed to be away, right? And
Sure.
they need to get Wolverine out of the action for this episode. And Phoenix decides to just leave before the finale fight. She's I'm going to leave, even though the job's not done, because she would have just ended the finale too easily. So
you have touched on something that I want to talk about, but I'll let you finish.
Well, yeah, I know where you're going, but here's my problem. Don't show Morph as Juggernaut. Don't show Morph as Hulk with the powers of the Hulk. Don't show him with the powers of Reed Richards, and then not have him be Magneto and just undo Magneto's plan. He could have floated the asteroid as Magneto. If he's got the power, he could have been any Ultra Omega powered Marvel character and just stopped the asteroid. Don't have him on the asteroid. Knock him out.
My argument would be that he can approximate powers he's seen, but you can't imitate. Like, even I think if Rogue touched Magneto's face, I don't think she would be able to use every last drop that he would need to stop the asteroid. And you're right, it is a flaw when you have it that he can take on the powers, but it is one of those things that I feel like a lot of times it's like, oh, just take a second and explain at some point this season that he's not really taking on the powers to set up a moment like that. But my complaint that I mentioned is something that you referenced. There's this crazy moment where Jean's like, actually, I'm the Phoenix. I'm going to take care of everything that's down here on Earth. And look at how Phoenixy I Phoenix. And then I'm done Phoenixing. And oh, the Phoenix is gone, because in the second half of the episode would have actually been about a minute and a half. So I didn't feel I would have preferred Phoenix never show up.
Yes.
Than to show up conveniently as a plot device.
It was a bit odd.
I was very disappointed.
His red costume.
No, that's fine. I'm actually okay that she didn't wear the red costume. It's more that I would have rather not seen her as Phoenix. And Ivan Soda, we haven't seen it in a while, sir. So this show isn't perfect.
Coming in hot. Coming in hot.
It's as close to perfect as you can get. And I think I see where you're coming from with Morph, and I feel like there is an explanation. They just should have taken the time. I feel like there's no explanation for having Phoenix show up to basically do some parlor tricks and be like, all right, I got something else to do. I got to go, but nice seeing all of you.
Right. I must now return to my home planet.
Well, something. Yeah, exactly.
Or a timeline.
What do you think of these criticisms, Nate? I feel like I can see the wheels turning as Brody and I are whining and complaining.
I mean, I think the Morph thing is just like kind of like you said, like it's a skill issue of just because you have the powers doesn't mean you can use them as efficiently or in the same way. So I do agree. It's just it's a story writing. You've kind of written yourself into a corner there of like you have a guy that can copy anybody's powers. But I am choosing to believe that even if he copied Magneto's powers, that he wouldn't be able to use them effectively in the same way for Magneto's plan. But as far as the Phoenix stuff, yeah. My complaint is how it feels like a lot of stuff that we kind of knew was happening but still didn't see happen like off screen. Like we started and Jean was like dead. Like I feel like we could have come back and got more. If I feel like it would have hit differently if there was more like a longer fight between Cable and like him. Through Sinister controlling him, uses his power to like actually drown her, and it's just like awful, like, oh my god, I can't believe he actually killed her. And then the Phoenix Force ticks in to bring her back, and maybe there's some plan where he knew that she still had that little bit of power in her that could revive her. So I don't know. If there was more expanded upon the idea, maybe I could get behind it, but it does feel kind of like just throwing it in there to throw it in there. It does go in line with the comics. There are times where she's died and like the Phoenix Forces that's still like in her has like come back and then like brings her back to life. But I don't know. It felt really like almost like too self-contained. I have the same issue with the Wolverine thing of like, and even the stuff with Xavier Magneto, we come back and they're just like, didn't you have the helmet on, which was blocking your powers? Like, didn't we just skipped all of that stuff, which I mean, I'm not mad
I
at
think
because there was so much good stuff, but it felt weird, like, to kind of jump into.
This was listed as a 42-minute episode, and I feel like we could have used like 3 more minutes just explaining some things. So we'll kind of go through it chronologically. When we ended last week, Wolverine was having adamantium ripped out of his bones, and we didn't actually see all of it happen. And then it's like, okay, when we do finally see him, he's laying in the bed, just trying to recover. And it's barely dealt with. I actually thought there was going to be a moment when Bastion was on the asteroid, and I don't know, he was going to just gut him with the bone claws or something. But we didn't get that. Instead, Wolverine decided to take a little bit of a nap. Daniel, yeah. Well, he does have a healing factor, but I know what you're saying. That is a rough go. Daniel in the chat is saying, I think Phoenix thing was like an emergency response of her body, not like it was back, like muscle memory. Well, the Phoenix was like, oh, she's about to die. Nah, I might need her, but I'm busy. So let me just help out for a second. And I do think it was something like that. And I'll let you jump in a second, Eric. But to the point of Bishop saying that he tried it 200 times, much like Doctor Strange tried 14 million times or whatever it was. The one thing that maybe was missing is like, no, even though it goes against what I believe in, I have to let Jean drown so that the Phoenix shows up because it's the one thing I haven't tried. I would have liked some of these possibilities to be addressed in the storytelling instead of us sitting here like, oh yeah, this was good, but I felt like I missed something. Like, where's episode 9.5? So where's the mini-sode? Go ahead, Nate.
The one thing that is like, this again feels like a backward storytelling thing of because they have season 2 planned out and where they want to go. Like the part of her pulling the mutant DNA out of Sinister is like, I think gonna have big impacts on where the direction goes with that storyline. And so I think they kind of work backward there of like, well, in order for her to do that, she's strong, but she's not that strong. She needs like a little extra bump. So like that doesn't happen without her getting the Phoenix powers there. But I don't know. I'm also assuming that they're going to like they've had the Phoenix intro in like almost every episode so far. It's a little thing, and they've been editing them in and out like of different things that are relevant, but that one has almost consistently been there. And I know that they want to do more Phoenix stuff. Everybody loves Phoenix stuff, so I guess it's more breadcrumbing for stuff down the line. But it did feel within the juxtaposition of like the ending of the last week's episode and then starting this one, it just like, did I miss a scene?
I rewound it because I wasn't sure if I had like missed like an opening credit sequence or something or something, because it just kind of jumped in and I was like, oh, all right, we're not really going to address what just happened to Wolverine.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's it seemed like it's an easy fix, that there was a little bit missing, and there's reasons why maybe you don't actually show this stuff, but I can't think of any good ones. Eric, I wanted to let you weigh in on all of this, and you shared with us this image that our visual audience sees right now of Morph showing David Brody's least favorite character, showing Sinister what he looks like now.
Yeah, it's a kind of a twofer. Like I put it in there and liking this image, but also liking the fact that Brody doesn't like him. So
thank you.
So
thank
yeah,
you.
No,
I also need to be said that before we started the podcast, Brody said the worst thing about this show is Morph. Or like Morph is ruining the show.
Well, and this, some of y'all might remember the fabulous Dr. Smith. Oh, the pain, the pain. So I love that Sinister turned into Dr. Smith. He's like, oh, my mutant DNA, oh dear. It was like, what just happened to him?
So from Lost in Space, you're talking about, yeah. Oh, the pain, exactly.
The pain.
Yeah,
it's so rare I can use Dr. Smith in any of this conversation.
That's fair.
This one, I think one of the issues here too, it's a very busy episode, kind of like hyper caffeinated. It's extra long. And I think like there's a bunch of connective tissue that you guys totally hit on already. It's like they left out, they left out some of it. I know Phoenix said, well, I did it to protect my son. I'll buy that. All right. I remember once when my my older son was just a wee lad, and I was holding him, and I almost tripped. And my body like moved, so like if I fell, I would have taken the brunt of it. As opposed to the years later when I now try to hide behind him, like if Dodgers game and someone's giving me a hard time. But that idea of like, as a parent, like there is an instinct to like protect. And so I like, and this I thought was brilliant moment of him beating him with his own arm.
Yeah, how many times have we seen someone slap with their own arm?
I love that.
It's really a couple. It's like really just Bucky and Cable,
But I gotta tell you, every time I love it. It's like, of course, what else am I going to use? Your own arm, your own best weapon. But I think some of this could have been massaged better, for sure. I mean, obviously, look at the rage and then the comic book store guy fervor of this panel right now. Like we're very worked up because they did leave out things, and they've been pretty good about it. The idea of a nebulous power, that's something that always annoys me. The sense of like, well, you have the power-ish. Well, you sort of have that. Like, you don't write in sort ofs and kind ofs. You got to make a choice. And so I think they sometimes had some soft logic here. But at the same time, then you have Rogue in this fight scene and sort of all is forgiven. This kind of moment, which, I could, split hairs and the other things. But when it does things right, including this episode, it does it brilliantly. So I'll be okay.
I will say I was cheering for Rogue this entire time. I was like, girl, get your due. Go on. I was like, slap his ass.
Well, and of course the callback to Remy and his name is Gambit. Remember it, and we're it takes us all back to that episode 5 and how it was like, oh man, and they called it Remember It, and I thought that that it was interesting because whenever you deal with things that happen like on the astral plane or in a character's like mind palace and things like that, it's always like, I don't know, it always, there's always something about it where I'm like, all right, so they're in the bar where they first met. Also, definitely bummed that the episode started like that, not with like Wolverine having adamantium ripped out of his his skull, but I understood where they were going. And it definitely made me feel like I had missed something when we sort of brought it back up to modern times. But the back and forth between the two of them, and I'm glad that they went with the Eric Magnus Lensher because Charles is the only one who calls him Magnus. Everybody else calls him Eric. And I'm like, all right, this is like David Banner on the Hulk TV series. It's like, what are we doing here? What is his name? And why are you calling him something different? Okay, it's his middle name. All right, I guess. Which, it's a little on the nose. That's very, very Stanley Jack Kirby, that the guy who becomes Magneto's name is Magnus. But, we're here to celebrate Magneto, not bury him. So in general, I found the way the story unfolded to be good. I just really felt like it was a real Deus Ex Machina with Phoenix is going to solve one problem but not the big one, so she's got to go. And I mean, I can walk it off. It'll be all right. I will still say that I'm impressed by what these 10 episodes were able to accomplish, especially compared to recent TV series Secret Invasion. But what's your thoughts, Nate?
I don't know what you're talking about. What shows that? I haven't seen it.
That's how secret it
doesn't
is.
exist. I was gonna say, I mean, the Dream Gay stuff, I think that I didn't even think about that being weird because for me, I was too busy thinking about the Bastion thing.
Yeah.
And while his new character design when he evolved was awesome and the fight scenes are really cool, I'm just really confused how they put that thing on his head, which disabled all of the Prime Sentinels, right? He couldn't control them anymore. But then he like manipulated the matter of his own body and shifted shapes and got wings from Cable's arm, but then somehow still couldn't take the thing from off of his head. Like that part to me, we just kind of like glossed over, and that was what I was kind of focused on the rest of the episode of thinking of like,
it's a great point because one, if you're going to have any kind of inhibitor, you should probably inhibit like all of his abilities and not just like, oh, I'm going to turn off the radio antenna, but he's still got 1 million MP3s saved, so he can still do plenty.
Are we really going to nitpick the writing now? Is that what we're doing?
I think in some
come
cases,
on, Mr. Morph. Also, by the way, I was reminded of this. Morph's powers are to copy the physical aspects of the thing that he copies. He can manipulate his own molecules so when all of the powers that we've seen him emulate so far in the show are stuff that are just physical things, nothing that's like energy manipulation or telekinetic powers or anything like that, right? We see him as Hulk, we see him as Mr. Fantastic, we see him as Juggernaut, we see him take these larger forms or stretchy forms or whatever, but never anything so far that he shot energy blasts. So based on what it says in the end thing of his powers, I think he couldn't even copy Magneto's powers. He could take Magneto's form, but he wouldn't be able to copy the energy, like the magnetic manipulation stuff.
Can he fly? I don't remember. Is he able to fly?
I don't think we've ever seen him fly.
I think Jean has levitated him, but I don't think he's ever flown on his own.
Okay.
Maybe Storm has used a wind gust. Well, Brody, were you happy to finally see Sunspot as Sunspot and name check himself as Sunspot? See, 100%. I knew I'd find something you were happy with.
100%. I love that he's denied who he is, and all of a sudden he has a name for himself. I thought that was terrific. He used his power, even though he kind of like laid the groundwork for failing when he was talking to Jubilee. Like, I don't really know what I'm doing, so I probably should say goodbye now because I'm not going to make it. And then he's the lead guy with Rogue out in front. He gained courage and experience pretty quickly, but it was great seeing him in his, in his persona, in his, all in his glory. Yeah, I liked that a lot.
Yeah, it is kind of one of the things that we've been hoping for is that, like, well, maybe when it's finally revealed, it's going to actually be a good moment. It's going to be a big moment. It's going to matter. And we have seen him in his form, but not really trying to utilize his full power. And I like that even Jubilee's sunglasses didn't survive this episode. There's the moment where.
I'm sorry. How did she survive this? I posted a picture of her exploding from right. What am I missing?
Another one too that I was like, air, oxygen, and then he just slowly descends her through the Earth's atmosphere.
Yeah, no, there was so much of that. Yeah, I was like that.
I was. I mean, by that point, I was still so wrapped up with the Bastion thing that I was just like, all right,
yeah,
just keep your eyes focused ahead. Don't look back.
Sure.
And enjoy.
Don't ask too many questions. Yeah, exactly. But no, I don't know.
I recommend that I look at the comics with Sunspot. Like, is there more to him that I'm just not seeing because he's so useless in my mind right now?
I mean, I'd have to think about what's a really good Sunspot story because he was always, a more of a utility player on the New Mutants, and I can't think of one, but if I know Daniel Drew is going to have a recommendation. And if he doesn't, try.
If anything, just keep watching the show, and they will. This will
probably
be,
I'm sure.
Yeah, the best
in wrestling circle. In wrestling circles, he'd be known as enhancement talent or jobbers, the guys who put other people over. That was sort of something.
He's a fluffer, right?
He probably would have been. Yeah, he probably would have been more.
I wouldn't so much call him a fluffer. I think that's something different. I want to circle back in the chat. And Ivan Soto, can the Phoenix arc ever be done perfectly outside of comics? If the MCU does it, will they finally be able to portray it accurately like they've done with Winter Soldier and other stories? Daniel Drew points out. In the original series, the Phoenix and Dark Phoenix sagas are the only on-screen versions that have ever been well done. The live action have both missed the mark, and I would like them to not try for a while.
It missed it by a lot. It's not like they just didn't quite pull it off. Like in both movie adaptations, I was stunned at how, despite having legitimate actors both times, they just didn't. It's like they got none of it right.
I think the suspension of disbelief is a little bit easier when it comes to cartoon or comic book, and I think that's what I know. Someone mentioned about the Magnus and Charles Xavier sort of mind palace thing earlier, how it was a little bit hard and slow to stomach. But that can only be done in cartoon form in my mind, because I'm just like, I wouldn't care otherwise. Because I just be like, why are we going to make believe place when we're already having so much make believe happen in front of us? So I don't know. I feel like it's potential for the storyline, especially in this current series, and maybe in season 2 might be a little bit more accurate.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. And we will share our thoughts on season 2. I want to make sure we sort of address everything. And, what we don't really get that much of, we sort of see him at the very end of the episode. I believe Beast is holding Charles. But, we see Magneto come back. Remember, Magneto's reborn and he does all this stuff. We don't actually see Charles coming out of it, and
Right.
it's not so much a criticism. It's like, oh, I kind of wonder what that's like for him. They do a good job setting up. It's like, oh, but if Magneto doesn't remember who he is, you'll both lose your minds, So it's like, okay, cool. Thanks for telling us what the stakes are in that, because, not everything always does that. Craig Robinson circling back to Rogue saying, remember it. That moment gave me the feels much like Wanda saying to Thanos, you took everything from me. And yeah, I agree. Thank you, Craig, for staying up late with us. Well, it's actually not that late in the UK now that I think about it. But thanks for being here all the same, regardless of the time it is. And I'll say that to everyone who is in the chat. Eric, you bombarded me with images, and I'm trying to sort through them on the fly.
I sent it to you 12 hours in advance.
No, you did that.
I sent it to you 30 minutes before. I can't win.
No, but this is my fault, because this is the time that I couldn't actually look at them until I watched the episode. You see the problem here. But and then
stayed up late for you, and this
is cyclical reasoning.
Were you sending him puck pics?
Well, there is one that he sent me that's apparently just for me.
Hey, more like Sabretooth pics, all right?
It's very good. Yeah, thanks.
The size of your superhero doesn't matter, Eric.
It's limited powers on the other hand.
But in any event, I mean, there's so much to deal with in terms of. I think that we very intentionally don't get a resolution on Bastion, because they're like, all right, yeah, he's kind of got this, really cool look now. He can be defeated, but let's save him again for another day. And yes, that is a Storm-like hair.
Or who's that Street Fighter character? I'm thinking of. Right, one of them has that exact same haircut.
Yeah,
well,
right.
I'll defer to the chat again, who maybe can come up with a
Daniel Drew. We're counting on you.
Yeah, I know we're really putting a lot on Daniel Drew.
Poor guy's just typing away.
I know. Well, usually is. So we appreciate that. So are we content with sort of this idea? I think that even if it looked like Bastion was, incinerated and turned to dust, it wouldn't have meant that the character was gone. So the fact that it's like, all right, we've beaten him, but we've got a bigger problem to deal with, and we kind of leave that thread hanging. How do we feel about that, Katie?
Sorry, I was looking up Street Fighter characters. Say that one more time. Sorry.
The fact that Bastion kind of, gets his comeuppance, but doesn't get like destroyed,
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a nice reasoning from Cyclops. It feels like we still have that same old Scott, like trying to promote what Professor Xavier has always said, like, you're one of us, like you're accepted. I felt a little dumb. Honestly, like I was just like, this is not a guy that deserves to keep going, but like I get where you're going with this. It just feels like we're bringing on another Sunspot in a way. It was an interesting take. I was kind of impressed that like Bastion couldn't lift the Sentinel's foot off of him completely, and that he was kind of just stuck there while everyone was kind of doing a kumbaya to bring him into the X-Men. Found that interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how all this plays out, but it didn't ring super true to me that like this is how they would deal with him. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, and obviously the questions that Nate, you poke a lot of big holes in the Bastion element of the story, and it's like, yeah. There's a lot of issues with sort of the resolution, and I always understand the idea of saving. A great character that you want to keep using, saving them for another day. But at the same time, it was a little bit unsatisfying. Nate, since you had sort of some of those issues with Bastion and his fancy headband and what it did and didn't do and what he could do afterwards, everything except take it off, as you said. Nate, how did you feel they resolved it on screen with Bastion?
I mean, the fight was really, really good. So my fight thirst was sated, and it is really like, it's like annoying, but it is it's like
the right thing to do.
It is the right thing to do. It's like, and ultimately, like, that's what this whole story is supposed to be about, right? Is like breaking the cycle of violence and like trying to lead with empathy. Like, the fighting is supposed to be done defensively, not offensively. That's what separates Xavier from Magneto, and I get it. I think it was done tastefully. It wasn't too straight up, all right guys, stop, we have to be friends now. Like, I think he like, and they laid the groundwork with the stuff with his mom and stuff, and like, especially too with the altering of his background to have him be kind of like this child of Master Mold and Nimrod, who was kind of raised as a human but also raised to hate mutants. Like, exploring this idea of like, maybe there is a redeemable world of where Bastion is not this evil guy. I thought that was cool. It did feel, I mean, I had the same thought of like, okay, maybe because Beast is really pushing on the controller, like the Sentinel's keeping him busy, but we're all just like standing here. Like, can't we knock him over on the ground first and then be like, hey,
Sure.
be nice, or else, or something. It did feel kind of weird, them all just like standing there talking while he's just there. But ultimately, I think it makes sense. Again, like, I still am reminded that even though, especially with this season, there's been a little bit more emphasis on more of the adult themes, and they've like kind of leaned into them instead of just like hinting at them, it is still, this is still from that legacy of that kid show of it. It's important to have that heart in it. And so I think the double-edged sword of getting to have that moment while also having Bastion, not be totally destroyed. Like, he's obviously not dead. He's obviously coming back. Like, but I also think that's great, because one of the issues that MCU has had lately is anytime they actually get a good villain, they just kill them off in the one movie and then they're gone. And like, to build up villains, you have to, they gotta win sometimes, so they become real threats, and then they lose. But then when they lose, they slip away in defeat and then come back later with another plan, so you can build this kind of back and forth, right? And so in that element, I am looking forward to seeing more of Bastion.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And Daniel, taking our homework assignment to heart, he hasn't read Sunspot stuff when he was young. I'm used to him being an adult during the past decade or so. So I don't have classic Sunspot recommendations. I don't remember the classic era of Sunspot where he got like a mini series, So I don't remember him getting a graphic novel. I think he was always a solid team player,
Gotcha.
Cool. Yeah, to put it in terms for David Brody, it's like you were never gonna get a mini series of Mackie Sasser, were you? No. So
you could do a documentary on the throw to second, but throw back to the pitcher rather. But yeah.
You don't want a solo adventure.
No.
What did you think though of Bastion obviously being put back on the shelf so that they can play with him another day?
Oh, it was a no-brainer. I mean, he's a great character, and you're not going to kill him because who knows how long this show is going to go on.
Sure.
And who knows if there's going to be a Fantastic Four spin-off show or a Spider-Man spin-off show that you could use him on one of the other shows. So I think, as Nate said, don't kill off. They killed Thanos twice in the movies. Like, don't kill the bad guy. Defeat him. Let him skulk off as they all do, but don't kill him. So I thought they played it perfectly. They damaged him enough You know, they made him, you know, touchable, and then they traveled through time, and he didn't because he sort of flew outside and sort of might have been killed, but we know he wasn't. So I think that's classic comic book story writing, and I think it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Because let's, you know, if somebody's gonna die and not stay dead, well, then let's not kill them in the first place. There's something to be said for that. So, Eric, I think this is the image you were talking about. It doesn't actually show Jubilee, but this is basically Bastion trying to explode her into space. Is this what you were talking about earlier, Eric?
There's an actual image, but I did like this one. This was actually him battling Cyclops.
That was so cool.
Yeah,
that was. I agree with you, Nate. Like the action in this episode was like so beautiful and so cool.
And Cyclops, like getting the, you know, again unhinged. Like I think they've definitely shown the limits of his patience and his sort of Boy Scoutness. So
yeah,
I'm excited to see this guy really flip out, especially if he gets that mask that you hate so much, Christian. I think that would be only more exciting.
The giant stupid helmet,
covers up his whole head.
It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Yeah, there's no way that walking around and being in a fight with that giant helmet is going to make you fight better.
Has there been a time in the cartoon, in the animated series at all? Because he did it in the comics where he just puts the visor buttons in his palms.
Yeah.
And I haven't, because he hasn't done that in this iteration of the show.
Yeah, he's
always doing this.
Yeah.
But the older, didn't he have it? Yeah, the hand one. I remember when he upgraded.
Does he have to meet Spider-Man first, or?
Right.
Or it's definitely a Spider-Man move, but it seems like an obvious where they can't tie your hands. If you can't do this, you can't open his visor.
Yeah.
So, Eric, why did you want to share this with our visual audience?
That's Jubilee exploding. That was actually
okay, but that's from the comics, so that's okay.
That's why I tried to do AI of Jubilee exploding, and it wasn't able to for some reason. I don't know why. The limits of AI. Porn. Yeah. Well, that it can do, but this, unfortunately, is the best I could come up with. Was when Jubilee got almost like a nuclear power at some point in the comic book. And in my mind, if she was in space with Sunspot, this is what she would look like. And they didn't quite go there, which I guess for the best. We all love Jubilee. It'd be kind of a strange, horrible way for her to die in Sunspot's arms, exploding.
Suffocation in pure space.
Freezing, right. So I'm okay with her still alive, but it again, the questions pop up and the sort of nebulous powers issues still arise, but you live to fight another day. That's all that matters.
Right. Without you definitely without visor. So yeah, I think that obviously the Magneto protocols just show how stupid humans are when they're like, "Oh, this is our last resort," and then it's like,
"Let's kill us all."
It didn't work. Okay. Well, I guess a giant meteor is gonna hit North America now, and Europe was probably like, "All right, so what's the big deal?" You know, Craig Robinson was probably like, all right, so what? There's going to be a big, like a tsunami wave, and then everybody will be fine in jolly old England. So what's the problem? You know,
it's not like Iron Man could have helped.
Well, he was just there to look cool. You know, he just was there to
with his shoulder pads.
Is there a rule against non-X-Men helping in this show?
No, it's not a rule against non-X-Men helping, but it's the years of conditioning of MCU of the property lines being drawn in the sand. So it's nice that they included them, but even then, like this is definitely one of those, like, that's a mutant problem kind of a situation. Like they're not going to get involved.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just the Magneto plan. It never seemed like a great one. Like they make it sound like they've been working on this for years and years and years. And it's like, so the plan was blow up the asteroid in a way that would likely cause the asteroid to come straight to Earth, creating an extinction level event. Like that.
Well, that was the thing that didn't make sense to me. I was like, was that the plan the entire time? Because like, if they wanted to like explode it, one, how did the X-Men just watch it come towards them? And then two,
they gave up pretty early. They're like, oh, well, that's gonna happen.
And then, you know, like Nightcrawler's praying and all this stuff. And I was just like, so you're not going to do anything? Like you've had so much thrown at you. You're not even going to try and like laser it away. Yeah. There was some missteps on that, I think.
I understand Cloak and Dagger, Daredevil, and Captain America not doing much. They can't fly.
Sure.
But don't put Iron Man in the episode then.
Yeah.
Because then you're like, Iron Man's like, well, look, there's a giant asteroid a mile wide coming down. We don't know much about the asteroid, so let's just stand here.
It's a shame I can't fly and shoot something at it. Oh, wait.
Yeah, if only I had the power to get up there and help in some way using Stark tech. Do I have Stark technology to maybe disintegrate it? No, I'm just going to stand here.
Also, like he's done the thing where he's put like boosters on an asteroid or a ship style thing to make it go back into space.
I mean, it just depends on which comic book you're reading, you know.
Sure.
Like, yeah. in the comic book world, there is a crossover episode where there's an issue where Tony is like spending the whole episode trying to figure out how to stop the meteor in the time before it lands, and then, of course, by the time he figures it out, the mutants have fixed the problem. Like, I'm just glad that they showed that they're willing to include these characters in this show. Which signals to me that we actually might get Onslaught and get the full crossover of it, not just Onslaught with only X-Men, but like Onslaught with like everybody. And that would be just like, we got Doctor Strange operating on someone. Like, that was so random and cool.
In full power too.
In full costume.
Yeah.
And I had so many questions about insurance. I don't know if Kaiser would cover the mystical arts or not.
No, there's just a really high deductible. You need to put down one of the 10 rings to be able to meet your deductible.
I do love that he's got the sling ring thing going, but he also has a mask for protection.
I mean, look, he's it's
great.
Yeah.
His hands are clean, I bet.
And I just want to get to this comment from Daniel Drew that it's funny that Tony didn't speak. It's the one time you can get Tony Stark to shut up when you don't want to pay a voice actor. The voice actor for Iron Man, by the way, on the show my daughter watches, Spidey and His Amazing Friends, so the preschool Iron Man, that voice is John Stamos. So
no way.
Maybe they didn't want to dip into the Stamos verse.
The only man who slept with almost as many women as Tony Stark.
You're probably not wrong. So it was cool to see these characters, and I agree with Nate. It's like, if this is just like sort of a step for like, one day we're going to see them fully utilized and actually doing stuff, it's cool to just introduce them now. And I know, Eric, you felt like you needed to point out the redesign on Dagger's costume, which is nowhere near as revealing as it tends to be in the comic book. So you almost wonder why it's designed similarly if it's not going to have the dagger down the front. And let's remember, by the way, this character is supposed to be like 15. So, there's some issues with the character of Dagger. But I always thought that their power set, the way that they complemented each other, was cool. And not everyone loved the TV series of Cloak and Dagger. Notably, my then co-host on the AfterBuzz version of this show, my friend Zia, hated that show more than anything. But I like the characters, so I'm a sucker for stuff like that. So I think we've touched on all the cameos. We've talked about Bastion, and let's talk about the ending and how. It's a few months later. The X-Mansion's locked up. Forge is still there, and this is sort of reminiscent. Now, for anybody who was reading comics at the time, I remember at the end of Fall of the Mutants, the world thought that the X-Men were dead. And there's a couple of times where that happens. One of them, they go through the Siege Perilous, and they become sort of different versions of their characters, and they have to find themselves. That's where, like, Storm's a little kid. All of a sudden, Psylocke, who used to be British, is suddenly Asian. There's a lot of questions that come from using the Siege Perilous. So I was kind of wondering, I'm like, oh, which of the tricks are they going to use here? And then it's like, oh, no, they got plucked into different points in time. Nate, are you familiar with any of the story points that I'm touching on? And what did you think happened when when Forge was like, I guess they're all dead? Which one of those possible choices in the choose your own adventure that is the X-Men did you think we might have gotten?
I did not even think about Fall of the Mutants, actually. Okay. I knew that they weren't going to be dead, but I really did not know what direction they were going to go in. We're far in enough now. Like, I knew we're going towards Apocalypse. I knew that a lot of the groundwork had been laid for that. So I assumed it had something to do with that. And as soon as we got the flash of like the title card of 3000 BC, or I was like, oh, it's happening. I knew exactly what was happening.
Right.
which makes a lot of sense with the characters that they've set up. You know, all the Cable stuff we've gotten, Gambit dying, Wolverine getting his claws stripped. Like, there's lots of things that are clues as to what they're setting up for.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it was interesting that we got that flashback because Katie, that was some independent study you did on your point, because you're like, wait, who's this guy? And it had sort of the weird apocalypse mouth.
It totally did, and it was familiar to me, but I wasn't sure because I didn't know the name in Sebanor. Like that completely flew over my head. I was like, "What? We're just gonna add a new character in the last act? Like, what are we doing here?" And I had heard tell that like it might be apocalypse coming. Like these are sort of like the threads leading up to it. And because you told me to watch the post-credit scene, I was like, oh, well then duh. Okay. All right. And then things started to click into place. I had no clue the connection between the two. I don't know much of his story. I'll go and read the comics. So I'm very excited about that. It's interesting to me. But yeah, I was, when we kind of went through everybody branching off to the different timelines, I was like, what? So we're just a Lost in Space thing? Like, what are we doing here, you guys? Like, I was like, this is
oh dear, the pain.
Robinson.
Well, what you need to make sure you don't do is check out X-Men Apocalypse, the movie.
Trust me,
where Oscar Isaac could not have been more misused. He's an actor I enjoy very much in other roles, and he looked as bored as Famke Janssen did in X-Men: The Last Stand. If you're going to look bored in the movie, how can I pretend to be interested in it? Eric, obviously, and by the way, did you make sure to did you look for images where the search terms were apocalypse and Psylocke's cleavage, or was that just a happy accident that you got there?
or just my computer knows me. I don't even have to ask for these things. That's also possible.
AI generated searches.
Yeah. Or was it just in a folder you have marked Olivia
Recently
Munn?
viewed.
Was that really what it was?
Recently viewed as of 10 minutes before I started watching the episode. And then, oh, wait a minute. I could use this. It's funny. You look at the still and you realize how terrible that makeup is. And that,
it's not
and what you were saying before, Katie, about like the things that don't quite translate into live action. And I think they could figure out Apocalypse at some point, but they sure as F didn't figure it out with this movie. And it's one of the many things they didn't figure out, unfortunately, with this movie. But Oscar
Isaac's problem when it comes to live action X-Men.
Eric, yes, I very intentionally avoided ever watching this movie, and I am so upset at you right now for forcing me to look at this.
Look at this and learn.
This is some of the worst costume design I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, hold on. Psylocke, I will say.
No,
it's cosplay. I mean,
it is. It feels DC. I'm not gonna lie.
No, and it's like,
also, especially for them to cast her as Psylocke. Like 29 years later, after they finally reconciled that like maybe we shouldn't have a British woman, Betsy Braddock, inhabit a Asian woman's body and like cosplay her entire culture, and then they still cast a white woman as Psylocke. Like, I don't care if she has.
I'm sorry for triggering you so much with one still. I usually
this movie
do that for
could never have been made. After watching the Phoenix one, I was like, I'm not watching more X-Men movies. The idea of them doing Apocalypse was just rough. And I was all for X-Men at 1-2. Not great movies, but I enjoyed them.
Jesus Christ,
Christian search history.
Right here. For some reason, Eric just had texted me this earlier. It is a comic book accurate representation of the costume, but it ends up looking like cosplay because it's completely unfunctional,
Actually, when I wear that outfit, you'd be amazed at how much I can pull off.
And Christian,
way to not have razor burn. I'm just putting that out there.
using the Maya Rudolph rule that she can play black people on Saturday Night Live, Olivia Munn's mother is Vietnamese.
Okay.
So
well, there you go. All right.
Perfect film.
They got as
I'm
little
sorry.
amount of Asian as they could for an Asian character.
We're gonna have to allow it, unfortunately. You know?
I mean, it happened already. So
Maya Rudolph is as white as me, but she plays Beyonce. So, you know.
I mean, listen, it's not as accurate as Emma Stone playing Asian in the movie Aloha.
Open the can of worms.
Yeah,
lots of redheaded Asians. Cut it out, Eric.
I feel like Nate's the only one that can have an opinion on this right now.
No. I'm allowed to have opinions on Asian casting because my kids.
Marriage.
So,
he married.
Oh, that's
into
true.
It.
Yeah,
I married into this opinion, and
your kids can play Psylocke.
As that should be great. At least we can have the little psychic knives.
Or the reboot of Aloha.
Yeah, but to be fair, I thought that Olivia Munn was partially Asian, and before that was blurted out, I was actually in another window Googling it. For some reason, I type in Olivia Munn, and all these pictures of Eric Conner drooling showed up. So it really was a real distraction. So we get the character of Apocalypse, and people know him from the movie. He was on the original version of the X-Men animated series, so the 92 series. And he was voiced by John Colicos, who people who are longtime 70s nerds, he played Baltar on the 70s Battlestar Galactica. And he had a great booming voice for Apocalypse, but it is of course a character that you can do. I mean, he's thousands of years old, so there's so much you can do with the fact that we have him, and it just the idea that you get Apocalypse. He is, of the big bads in the X-Men, he's one of the biggest. Of a single individual. If you want to put all the Hellfire Club together, then you're sort of cheating because you have a lot of them, and that sort of a thing. So the idea that we're going to meet this young version of Apocalypse, probably where he doesn't hate us yet. And then there's the present day Apocalypse picking through the rubble of Genosha, and he picks up a playing card. And I'm still not mourning Remy LeBeau because I'm convinced he's not dead. Boy, they sure got to the end of the season with him staying dead. So Katie, the reason why I sort of started pulling on these threads was that you had to do a little homework about it, but what you found out about the notion of Apocalypse, what are your thoughts for I want to find out more about this in season 2? Do you want to go see the Oscar Isaac movie? I will not bring up the image again because I don't want to upset Nate. We've already shared too many upsetting images today on the show. I don't know how that one got up there. That's completely inaccurate.
You just want to stick that up there.
I apologize that one got up there.
Look, I like the live action X-Men movie. I think I've seen one, and then I've maybe seen some more of the Wolverine stuff, but I've kind of never gravitated to those movies just because I've heard so much about them, and I've never really had an interest in that regard. The comics I'm very into, so I'll probably go and do some research and start with the first appearance of Apocalypse in the comics, and then just kind of scroll through.
You're going to want to go a little further than that when he shows up in the last panel of X Factor #5. The character is not as well fleshed out as he becomes later. There's an entire age of Apocalypse, which is something that is fascinating. And they did visit that on the original series as well. And I'm sorry, what were you going to say, Katie?
I was just going to say, luckily, our good friend Christian Bladt here turned me on to the fact that they are having a sale on the Marvel Unlimited, for X-Men 97, and that you can get the first month of X-Men Unlimited or Marvel Unlimited for 97 cents. So I did, and I have just been cruising through a bunch of comics because I can't find them at my comic book store.
Yes. On that same note, if you don't want to get Marvel Unlimited, and you have a local public library, which you most likely do,
true. That's true.
You can use your library card. All the different libraries have different apps. Hoopla is the one I would recommend. You can sign in with your library card, and it has a massive comic library.
Okay.
You can borrow up to 15 titles a month, and it's it's so so nice. That's how I read 90% of my comics now. They don't have all of the newest stuff.
Sure.
It's like usually about like 6 months to a year behind on newer releases. But in
That
terms
seems
of
like a library thing.
collections, exactly, and the older stuff, like they've got everything, and they're really good about whenever there's like a, with all the X-Men stuff coming out, they put in a bunch of X-Men books, and there's a bunch of really cool like collections which will have different runs but all like the same character kind of, so you can follow their arc through different books. It's really cool. I highly recommend it.
Okay, yeah.
Well, Nate had a better deal. I thought 97 cents was a steal, but you know what's better than 97 cents? Free. So and
And
it is only
library.
97 cents for 1 month. After that, I think it costs
like
as much as
$9.99 or
it
something.
costs to get Stephen Strange to perform surgery on you. So you got to be really careful to not let it auto renew, Katie.
No, trust me. I've got some notifications in my phone.
No, don't be me.
All right.
No. Okay.
So we're
Oh, no.
yeah, Eric, yeah.
Poor Eric.
And all
Eric
the
didn't
Olivia Munn and Wild photos don't take away that pain.
And wild. Wow. Okay.
And of course, yes, Eric didn't realize that he forgot to cancel a subscription after one of our Geekscape book clubs, which we'll talk about at the end of the show. I do want to sort of finish up on our apocalypse talk before we look ahead to the future, literally the future that was shown at the end of the episode. But Nate, you feel like obviously, yeah, we were building to apocalypse, and as sort of somebody to just really hold off until this next season, to me, he's one of the biggest bads. Sinister is a great character, but he doesn't have anything on the level of Apocalypse, at least my perception. So your thoughts on really having Apocalypse somewhere next season?
I mean, I think given how the ending is, I think we're not going to get Apocalypse somewhere. I think we're going to get Apocalypse 3 wares. We're going to get El Sabinur, and we'll also get present day Apocalypse, what's happening as their X-Men are gone, and then we'll get future Apocalypse, who's already taken over the world apparently, as Mother Ascani is teaching young Nathan Summers with his parents kind of there. There's like, especially with the way that they handled Bastion in terms of like not just like making him look really cool and have really cool action scenes and fight scenes, which is very important, but also in terms of like his character decisions and the things that he does like make him like really evil and menacing and scary. And so with the way that they've handled that character, I'm very excited for this adaptation of Apocalypse. Like I think the people running the show really have a good grip on the X-Men lore, and giving Apocalypse the weight that he really deserves, I think is going to be like so satisfying to see played out. Even something as simple as them Bo making it very clear that like they're not doing time travel shenanigans to fix Gambit's coming back, because as we see now at the end, they're very, very heavily implying that Gambit's going to get brought back as one of Apocalypse's horsemen, as right. So
yeah, right, exactly. And sort of the resurrection of Warren Worthington III, one of the original X-Men, the Angel, coming back as Archangel, was some of the coolest design that we got associated with Apocalypse from a later part of the run in X Factor. So Brody, a lot of this talk is after your time comics wise, but perhaps you saw the great film X-Men Apocalypse, so maybe you have some familiarity. Your thoughts on getting Apocalypse next season, and also looking at the future.
I didn't see the great film Apocalypse. I saw the shit film Apocalypse. I just want to be clear on that.
Okay, all right.
I watched the show 2 hours before we started this episode, this podcast. So I had time to thoroughly research Rachel Summers, at least how she ends up in that scene, and it's based off the Cyclops and Phoenix miniseries. So I'm all caught up on that, and yes. I think you're 100% right with Gambit coming back as Death, as one of the 4 horsemen of the Apocalypse, as he did in the comics. I think Apocalypse, to Katie's point, will be more easily replicated in animation form, and done the right way, unlike the movie. I think showing off what he does and how he does it in animation will be great. And having him in 3 timelines, and having Cable in one timeline and young Nathan in another when he's technically born before his sister. There's a lot going on, and I'm excited to see how they explain it all. But yeah, I think he's the perfect villain for the second season. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree, and Daniel drew also this idea of a three-front apocalypse war is a very ambitious bit of storytelling that they're probably going to jump right into in season 2. Eric, your thoughts on Apocalypse and the clan Ascaniaf in the future, and our pal Rachel Summers, who ends up as part of that, all that stuff. What are your thoughts for the way that the episode ended, Eric?
I think seeing him amidst the rubble, and the idea of like, well, okay, they could just go kind of with who we grabbed from the comic books, but there's so many dead bodies there now. I'm curious to see beyond Gambit, who else might he bring back to life to serve as one of his horsemen. So I'm excited about those possibilities. The idea of Gambit as a villain is incredibly exciting for this, and especially because it's going to be him versus Rogue at some point. And the 3 timelines, I think it's smart. It's a good way to, it's a pretty big ensemble they have here with this show. So I think putting them in different timelines, splitting them up into groups, it's smart writing. It's smart TV writing. So it's a kind of a way to take advantage of having this big cast without sort of some characters just getting pushed way off to the corner. So I think the timeline is the way to do it. And in a way, you also then kind of can really go to the edges of the X-Men universe in terms of, X-Men always, dealt with the future and the past. And I think like that's where he is the perfect villain as a bridge between all of it. I suppose him, and then I guess Kang, but Kang's going to be either busy or not busy at all, depending on where the Marvel Cinematic Universe lands.
He's going to be. We've established that Kang is just going to somehow look a little different, but there all roads are still leading towards Kang, I believe.
Kang is still in the building.
One of his variants, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it's smart, beyond exciting, and I think already the sort of little hints they've given us are great in the visual, and compensate for the movie that I shall not name, and I shall not buy for Nate for Christmas either, which I'm not sure what to get him now.
I know. Well, you obviously can't part with your copy of the film that shall not be named, and there's some talk in the chat about the Horsemen of the Apocalypse, and do they ride horses? Well, that's kind of one way to look at it. They're not exactly horses per se, but yes. And I can't believe you can get this comic for $5. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. There should be 4 of them eventually, and we'll see who they choose. And until you said that, Eric, I didn't think about, in terms of, beloved character Leech, who seemingly died in Genosha, the fact that he can block all mutants' powers just by being close to them, he would be a very interesting villain to be weaponized. So there's speculation as to when we will get the next season. I did see a social media post from somebody who's been working on this season that today is actually the last day that this person's working as an animator. So I feel like it's not going to be 2-3 years, but probably a solid 1 year, maybe like late next year. But I don't think it's going to be too much. But it's going to be too long. That's my point. But it's a great time to catch up on the original series and rewatch some of this stuff. There's some other big Marvel news, but if any of you need to go, I want to give you the opportunity to take a proverbial hall pass and step out and say goodbye, and we'll get all your plugs in. But if no one speaks up now, I'm going to talk about some interesting news in terms of on-screen Marvel stuff that's coming. It is not more episodes of this, unfortunately, but eventually we know we're going to get more. And I'm going to start with the one that I'm going to admit that I was probably the most excited about, which is the idea that Nicolas Cage will be starring in a Spider-Man noir live action series. Not excited about the fact that it's for MGM Plus. though, you know, the
Oh,
app that none of us have, the app that no one needs for any reason. Oh, except for now when they're like, yeah, but don't you want to see Nicolas Cage as Iron Man Noir? And I'm like, well, Iron Man Noir would be cool too, but Spider-Man Noir. And I'm like,
Leech
yes,
Noir.
of course I would. Yeah. So that's and it's going to be on Prime Video in the rest of the world. So good news for you, Craig Robinson. You just have to watch it on Amazon if you have that already. But the rest of us are going to have to figure out what MGM Plus is. I'm excited about that. I like the character. He's intriguing. Can he sustain a whole series? Well, I'm asking that about the character and also about Nicolas Cage. We'll see. Eric, obviously, as someone who admires the film work of Nicolas Cage, do you feel like you're excited for this series? And will you get MGM Plus just so you can watch it?
Oh God, I don't know if my marriage could survive another subscription service. I really don't. I don't think my children could eat. So it might not happen.
Well, maybe you'll have to put a pause on Olivia Munn's OnlyFans. Maybe that's what you have to do.
Hey, hold on. I mean, listen, I gotta look forward to something every day. No, I think it's a great idea. I mean, Nick Cage, we know, is like a comic book nut. So to give him a property that really can sort of be his, that gets to dig into him. And I know he had Ghost Rider, but you know, he has a lot of mortgages. You can only blame him for so many of his creative choices. But I think Spider Noir, what he did with that role in the original Spider-Verse movie was great. So I think it's a crazy idea, but I think that's kind of what we need, is something so strange that is kind of custom fit for a guy like him. But yeah, MGM Plus, I'd rather, Christian, maybe you rent it and then do a live share or something, not on the Geekscape.
Oh, so
no, just on Twitch.
Yeah.
Twitch.
No, and remember, Eric, we never talk about anyone who goes out of their way to get content without paying for it.
Right.
If you remember, we got a strike for that once.
No, but
even though I did the exact opposite. Just alluding to the fact that people might be able to do that is something that we're not talking about. We're not encouraging. You're going to have to pay for MGM Plus. And
it was a farcical comment.
I disagree with you, Ivan Soto. It's not a channel. The plus never means a channel. It's not a channel. It is an app. And if you want its premium content, you're going to have to, it's probably just like Peacock. There's some free stuff, but if you want to watch the good stuff, you have to actually pay for it. Yeah. So, but in any case, I look, I like anything that expands the Spider-Verse. What do you think about this? So far?
Everything.
I'm trying to think of what I don't want to see. And I can't come up with anything. I know that Eric still has a great script for a Rhino played by Paul Giamatti, and still shopping it around, Eric.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of interest from a guy I met in an alley who was drinking a fair amount of hooch.
Who sounded like Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage wouldn't say no to it. You might want to call him.
Oh, if it pays, he'll do it.
Yeah. But what does the rest of the panel think? Nate, is Noir Spider-Man something that piques your interest if you didn't have to pay for it, or would you be like, no, I'm not that interested anyway?
I am negative interested in it. I read the headline and I went, man, I wish that I could devote less brain space to what I just learned. I'm so tired of just like we're spinning off a character because it was popular in a movie that came out how many years ago now, and like Sony is not like spinning off these things and making these great franchises. Like all of the I'm Venom was stomachable, but I am just not anything that Sony is involved in. I'm just immediately incredibly cautious and not excited about. I'd be very happy to be wrong for it to come out and for it to be good, but this just screams cash grab, uninspired adaptation to catch on a fad that has already passed. Like I did not watch that movie and go, wow, that Nick Cage cameo was so good that I want to watch a whole show about that. That is never a thought that crossed my mind at all.
But what if they made a show out of What if they made a show out of Spider-Punk?
I would be more interested in that,
Okay.
but ask me again 2-3 years from now, and I'll probably be less interested. Like,
what do you think, Katie? More Nicolas Cage in your life, the better your life becomes, or
I mean,
are you in a wait and see mode for this?
Nick Cage is water. He adapts to how good the project is. So it depends. It depends on a lot of things. I will say that I'm guessing that Amazon Prime will have at least like a teaser or like some kind of like, hey, get a month free of MGM Plus with your subscription or something. Like, I think there's going to be some kind of like, don't you want to see type of deal, and I hope that they do that, because otherwise I'm not getting another app, you guys, like just to watch one show. We did that with Ted Lasso and it paid off, and Apple TV Plus is rocking it. It's just like MGM Plus. What else am I going to watch on there? Bond movies? We've got them all.
Yeah, all they show is Living Daylights and nothing else.
Okay. So I mean, it like the lure of the show, it does pique my interest. That's for sure. It's just like the accessibility of it. If you're going to make it hard, that's going to be a tough one for me to key into.
Well, Ivan insists that MGM Plus isn't a streaming service, and I can't say I know that much about it because I've never tried to watch it. But they're gonna pass on Nicolas Cage's salary to us somehow. So
sure,
watch for it to not be as easy to watch as something else. But I did, I think that I like that they were developing this project. It is a product, but before Nicolas Cage was involved, and they're like, all right, well, I guess he's going to actually do it. So I guess all we can do is see. When we get news like this one, all we can do is just say, okay. So Natasha Lyonne is going to be in the Fantastic Four movie. Who she's playing, we don't know.
The thing.
She's playing.
I'm in.
Well, she's playing Crystal, maybe.
She could be Crystal, Johnny Storm's girlfriend, one of the Inhumans, which is a word that they don't throw around very often. And also I guess she could be Alicia Masters, but I'm hoping it's just some character that none of us are thinking of. But
Medusa
is going to be the car, the car thing,
the fantastic car. Yeah.
That voice is so iconic,
and Ivan wants to know, do people like her? And it depends on who you
I
ask.
love her.
Some people like her, yeah. People like Poker Face. My wife worked on Orange Is the New Black, and she had a great arc in there.
She did.
Yeah. All right. So here's the explanation from Daniel Drew.
Wikipedia.
Yeah. So MGM Plus used to be Epix, and it's an American premium cable and satellite television network. Okay, so it's not an app, but it's like HBO.
But Prime,
you're still paying for it, Ivan. Stop driving me crazy,
Amazon bought MGM, so they have MGM properties. So I'm just like, it just seems like a natural course that it'll be on Prime in some capacity.
They said it's going to premiere on MGM Plus, and then it will be on Prime.
Domestically, it premieres on MGM Plus. The rest of the world will get it. It's like they do with Star Trek, where some of it is on Netflix internationally, and some of it is on Amazon Prime.
You just need a VPN, and you can watch Netflix from all over the world. So,
I don't think that that's a great idea. Apparently, you weren't listening. What I'm saying, David, is that we don't try to get
that would be illegal.
Non-region.
We would never break the law.
No one wants that.
Strike Brooklyn boys, not us.
Hold on. VPN stands for very pricey network. I was talking about MGM Plus.
All right. You're talking about paying.
And here's the thing: at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because even if it's free, Nate's like, nah. And if I tell him it's good, he's
steal
like,
a car.
You wouldn't steal Spider Noir.
You wouldn't, So that's they're building something for that movie. There's not really much to say about it until we know more. Daredevil: Born Again and Ironheart trailers were shown at the Disney upfronts. They are not online. Which is good, because then I would have to decide, like, oh, do I want to show it on here and spoil things, and then it doesn't matter. But I know that Daredevil: Born Again will be next spring. I don't know that they gave us an actual date, but they did say that March 2025 is when we're going to get Daredevil Born Again. So that's something that I think a lot of us are looking forward to because it seems to be at least maybe an indirect continuation of the Netflix series, but it's still Charlie Cox. We're still going to have Karen and Foggy. Any of the bad decisions that they made have been, the decisions I'm talking about were the idea that they were going to have Karen and Foggy die off screen in the pilot episode. So
Right.
I've done away with that. And then the other big news, which I don't want to play it because it's got the song in it, but Agatha
Oh.
is going to be September 18th this year. That is going to be the next Marvel show. That's going to be the next Marvel series that you can expect us to be covering here on Marvel Movie Talk. And there are a number of videos out there talking about how the show went through a couple of different iterations. It's had like 4 names. And then they're like, oh, I know. Everybody talked about that song at the end. And I figured out how to use the mute button. So anyway, everybody talked about that song at the end. So it was like going to be Agatha the Darkhold Diaries. It was going to be the House of Harkness, Coven of Chaos, or Coven of Chaos. Lying Witch with Great Wardrobe, that one being the joke. And then like, it was Agatha all along.
Yeah, say it was a joke.
Yeah.
It was a setup for a long play, a long
Yeah,
time.
shame
Or
your
episode titles.
But to Nate's point about making us wait for stuff, WandaVision ended like 4 years ago, and we're getting our Agatha series.
Right.
It was the pandemic. It was a pandemic show.
Right. Yeah.
So now we're getting Agatha. Do we still want Agatha? Are we still excited? It was Agatha all along. We're getting Catherine Hahn. I thought was great as a character. The reveal was fun, and then I was hugely disappointed the way that series ended. Yeah, that was that. You want to talk about not sticking the landing? WandaVision would be it. But who's excited for Agatha being the next Marvel Studios series we're going to get? We're getting a hand from Katie. We're getting a sort of a Queen Elizabeth, R.I.P. Wave.
Rubbing a beard.
And rubbing a beard. I'm going to watch it largely because I do this show. But I liked her as a character. I can only hope for the best. Nate, are you going to sit this one out?
I will watch the first episode.
Okay. Well,
if it's good, I'll keep watching it.
Well,
if not, I probably will pass.
I smell the game. What did Nate like?
We could count on Nate for one episode on September 18th, but perhaps by September 25th, you don't look for Nate.
It'll be called Nate's Quiet Rage.
I'm always happy to be pleasantly surprised that something is good instead of not bad. Yes. But my impulse feeling on the Impulse spinoff track record is not great.
Sure.
Every time something comes out and someone's like, oh my God, everybody loves this one character, let's make something. And then 4 years later, when it's finally finished, it comes out and nobody cares. Like sometimes a really good side character is just a really good side character. And that's okay.
When also chasing a trend is always tricky. Like Agatha had a moment. She had a real moment, and Catherine Hahn as a performer has had a very good career. But like the time to strike was when the iron's hot, and this iron is pretty cold now. And you're asking us to sort of not just remember Agatha, but kind of get excited for her character, which is she was only on a handful of episodes, and again, that was so many years ago. So they're gonna have to, I know Disney Plus is kind of smart about they'll do the Marvel Assembled, and they'll kind of get us back into the flow of it. But it's a pretty big ask of the audience, and I will do it because I am loyal to Christian Bladt.
Thank you.
Really? That's what it is.
Yeah.
Well, that's one word for it.
Are they doing a weekly drop, or is it all coming out at once?
They're going to do 2 episodes that first day, it says.
Okay,
so on September 18th. So that day, Nate, you'll know.
I'll know if I'm in or out.
I want a live stream of your reaction to it. We know.
If I email you. If I email you and Nate's response is, I'll be around for the first half of your show, I'll know that he didn't think enough to watch the second episode. And I'm sorry, what were you going to say, Katie?
I was just it was not a good thing. It was like, who cares? I was just saying what Nate's face would be like if you live streamed it. It would just be
I'd rather be watching Spider-Man Noir.
Well,
but
if that's what Nate says, then we know. Go ahead, Katie. Sorry.
I will say that I am glad that they're releasing it in the fall time, because it feels like, oh, we kind of have like these witchy, sort of almost Halloween-y type things, like this thematic kind of spooky season stuff. And I'm really glad, because I missed that. I missed that about like the Marvel TV shows releasing around that time, to have sort of that, like, I don't know, spooky fun.
Is Kathy Najimy going to be in this?
Kathy Najimy?
Yeah. That's the goal.
Is that how you say it?
I've heard it Najimy.
I've heard it Najimy. Yeah.
Well,
but I hope so, because I love Kathy Najimy.
Stay tuned. We'll let everybody know in September. Obviously, prior to that, we'll be covering Deadpool and Wolverine, and we'll have some fun standalone shows. Next week, I'm going to catch up with some of the guests we had on during the past 10 weeks and get their thoughts for how season 1 of X-Men 97 ended. And 2 weeks from today, in our slot will be Geekscape Book Club, where we'll be discussing Is Extinction. The Grant Morrison and David bought the wrong issues, he told us, but I think you have the right ones now.
They arrived today.
I totally
Katie
know
sent
exactly
me a text.
which ones.
Katie sent me a text late last night with some thoughts. So we'll get into that 2 weeks from today here. But don't worry, we'll still be talking Marvel movies and otherwise on this show throughout June and into the summer. But maybe don't look for us every single week. That's all I'm trying to say. But we'll be back with some X-Men talk with some of our extended family next week. But that is all the time we have for now. So I want to go around the horn and let everybody know where you can find our friends. Katie Hampton, where can they find you?
You can always find me at ElSassyPants, ElSassYPants, sometimes with a Z on TikTok. If you're in the LA area, tonight I've got a show. It's at the Broadwater Theater down in Hollywood, and it's with Nothing Burger. We're doing some laughy make-em-ups. Keep an eye out. The pack is moving. So in July, we're going to be at a new location. It's going to be very exciting. And then apart from that, you can always hit up my agent, Jason Hilton, at Lux Talent.
Nice. All right. Yeah. For all of your chicken suit wearing needs,
exactly.
Katie is always available.
I'm there.
Nate Miller, where can you be found, sir?
She was so prepared. I feel so underqualified to follow that.
No. Well, just drop the name of Katie's agent.
Hi. Yeah. Call Katie's agent and hire her to be a chicken for you. My name is Nate Miller. You can find me on the internet at Doglike Nate with 2 G's on all the places where you find people.
And David Brody, where can you be found?
You can find me on social media at David Brody with a Y. You can find me on the Brooklyn Boys podcast on all platforms. And you can find me on LinkedIn. I need a job. Can somebody hire me, please?
Talk to Katie's agent. See if Katie's agent can hook you up with something.
I just added Geekscape to my list of accomplishments. So it's in there.
Wait, is this going on your reel now?
Should.
I don't need, this is my reel. I just sent out an episode. This is why I don't have a job.
Wow. So some would say that about me, but this is more fun than having a job. Eric Conner, where can people find you other than oliviamunn.com?
Well, if you have a poultry costume big enough for me and Katie's busy, otherwise, you can find me at Count Eric Conner over on Instagram and the artist formerly known as Twitter, currently known as X, and also enjoying my New World Order McDonald's figures, including Ruth the Sabra, who I don't know.
Oh, Sabra is in the movie. Okay.
Or at least Ruth is. I don't know. They might maybe just avoid backstory. Just go, hi, I'm Ruth with no accent.
When we get to that movie, obviously that's
these guys are ready. They'll be in dry dock.
Well, yeah, and as we talked about last week, McDonald's does not care about movie release schedule changes. They're like, well, this is when we're putting the Happy Meals in there, so either you do it now or you don't. In any case, Thank you to everybody for sticking with us for another long extended episode, but we knew that we had so much ground to cover, and then there was all this news. But that is all the time we have for now. We will see you next time right here on Geekscape. But until next time, as the great Stan Lee would say, Excelsior!